How's it going, everyone? My name is Dan, and this is the first lesson in a series of drum lessons I'm going to do without any drums. That's why I call this drumming without drums. Now, I decided to do this because so many people would say to me, "Oh, you're a drummer, I'd love to play the drums, but I don't have any drums." And also, I started seeing some beginner lessons that I didn't think were covering the basics, the real essential foundational elements you need to be a good drummer, okay? So I thought, why don't I come up with a series where I show you how to play the drum set, not just play on a little practice pad. I actually show you how to play the drum set using random items you can find around your house. So let me start out by telling you what you're gonna need to do this. First off, you are gonna need a pair of drumsticks. Now, these are not your traditional drumsticks because they have this little rubber tip on them. It makes the stick bounce a little easier when you're playing on hard surfaces. But for our purposes, we're not gonna really need this little rubber part. We're not gonna need the stick to bounce all crazy. So you can just use some regular drumsticks. That's fine, but you do need some actual drumsticks. Now, the next two things you're gonna need something that's pretty thick, right? That sits pretty high up when you set it down on a bed or on a desk. And you're gonna need something that's lower than the thing that sits high, okay? So I have a folder here. It's filled with some stuff in it, random folder. I'm gonna put that on my right-hand side, and I'm gonna take this big fat criminal justice book, and I'm gonna keep this on my left-hand side. Now, let me say this. Everything I'm doing is geared around righties. I'm a right-handed player. So if you're a lefty, it's not that difficult. Just flip everything I'm telling you and you'll figure it out. Okay? So we got a fat book, or you can use a pot or a pan or whatever it is. As long as it sits higher than whatever it is you have on your right, then that's good. Now, I chose a folder not only because it sits low, but because it's pretty loose. So it gives that slappy sound. I'm choosing that slappy sound because I'm trying to simulate a drum that's called the snare drum. Now, for those of you that don't know what a snare drum is, it's that drum that sits right in front of the drummer, between their legs usually, and if you go to a concert or if you've seen a drummer on TV, you've seen him doing this probably, he's rocking out. Now this drum that he's hitting with his left hand every so often, and it gives that loud crack, that's called the snare drum. So the slap of the folder simulates that crack. Now, this over here, this big book, this is simulating what's called the hi-hat. The hi-hat are these two cymbals you see higher than the snare drum on the left side of the drummer, right? And they're these two cymbals, and you can make them tighter by using your foot, your left foot, or you can keep them kind of loose so they sizzle. This doesn't really sound like a hi-hat, but it's higher than the snare drum. That's the important part, okay? We got your hi, so we have your hi-hat, and we have the snare drum. Hi-hat on the left, snare drum on the right. So we pretty much covered the setup, except for one thing. We will be playing the bass drum. The bass drum is that big drum that sits on the floor, right? And the drummer plays it with his foot, his right foot. So we don't have a bass drum. We don't have any book we're gonna make act like the bass drum. So we're just gonna play the floor. I know you can't really see my leg, but I'm sure you can hear that. I'm just stomping the floor. Actually, lift your leg up and drop it when we play the bass drum, because that's how you play the bass drum anyway when you get behind a drum set. There's gonna be a bass drum pedal that actually hits that drum. And to play the pedal, that's what you need to do. You need to lift up your foot or your leg and then drop it, okay? So we talked about setup. The next thing and the last thing we're going to cover in this first lesson, every lesson is going to be pretty short, so don't worry. We're going to talk about the grip of a drumstick. That's your next real basic item that you need to learn about. So here's a little secret. A lot of drummers spend a lot of time on this and try to stress, oh, grip is so important. It's really not that important, okay? Basically, what you're trying to do, you're just trying to maximize the bounce that you get from a drumstick, okay? Because when you hit a drum or you hit a book, the stick is going to want to naturally bounce, so you're trying to get some bounce out of that, okay? So what you're gonna do, the best place to hold the drumstick is typically about 2/3 down the stick. You're gonna start by holding it between your thumb and your index finger. And to show you have a good grip, try to wiggle the stick like that. You should be able to control the stick between your thumb and your index finger, okay? So that point right there between your two fingers, that's called the fulcrum. That's just a technical term. Don't stress out about it if you don't remember it. You're going to do the same thing with your left hand. You're going to make it look like your right hand. And because your left looks like your right, this grip is called match grip, okay? My right matches my left and vice versa. Now you might see some drummers that play like this with their left hand if they're a righty. They'll play like this where their left hand is doing something funny. We're not going to worry about that, okay? We're just going to stick to match grip. Now let me say one more thing. You need your back 3 fingers to fall in loosely behind your fulcrum, right? That way, when we start playing more crazy stuff, you're going to have better control of the sticks. The final thing on grip is that when you're playing, your palm typically should be facing down. I've seen some great drummers where their palms are kind of facing each other. So it really doesn't matter that much. You're going to find whatever grip works for you. But start out with your palms down. You might want to just experiment by playing a few notes. Try to keep them even. And that's pretty much it, okay? That's your setup. That's your grip. And for the next lesson, we're going to talk about rhythms. There are a couple notes you need to know to understand basic drum rhythms, or any rhythms, right? And they're going to help us understand how to play a basic beat. Because very soon, within the next couple lessons, we're going to learn how to play a basic rock beat, and we're going to play along with some well-known songs. All right, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you check out the other lessons.